Today bestselling author Cheryl Bolen and USA Today bestselling author Alexa Aston with us. Ladies, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
This is kind of exciting. It feels like I have the old guard here, like not old, like old, like old, like
of course
honored guard. Let's go with honored guard.
Yet look at the stripe on my hair. I'm getting my hair cut tomorrow. It's like, okay, why didn't we take this one day later? Get rid of the gray or the white.
For me, it's always a very careful parting exercise. It's like if I layer it this way, it'll be just fine. Nobody will know. So.
Have y'all discovered that spray-on stuff you can get that L'Oreal? That's pretty cool.
I've never tried it. I probably need to.
When it's time, it works great. You part it and you spray it. It's in a little aqua container, and it covers you up for a day.
Which is all you need to get it tended to, usually. So that is a good piece of information to have. Well, Alexa, why don't we start with your book since it launches first this week? It's Love Blooms with the Duke, and it's the 6th book in the Suddenly a Duke series. And this has been just such a fun series to talk about.
It has been.
I love the idea
fun to write. Yeah. If I would have just stuck with the premise that guys who were unexpected dukes suddenly became a duke, that would have been fun. But I layered it also with women who are pretty unusual for their time period. So I have written about women who compose music, who train dogs, who are a Bow Street runner, a painter. So I've woven all different kinds of people in. And of course, these are all women that the Ton do not feel are suitable to be duchesses. But of course, these sudden dukes, they weren't meant to be dukes, and so they are thinking about things a little bit differently, and they're naturally attracted to these women, and it works out to be a good setting. And this one, it's actually a governess, which almost governesses have been overdone, it seems like, but Willa is a very unusual governess. First of all, her background, she comes from the theater world, which is not going to be what this duke is going to want. Her dad was a very famous playwright who slept with anything in a skirt that went on stage. And her mother was the most famous actress of the day. And they had a very volatile relationship. And they really kind of forgot most of the time that they had a daughter. They gave her a governess for a year, just long enough to let her learn how to read and write. And then she pretty much was left on her own. So she pursued whatever she wanted to learn. And her learning style is going to be very different from what the average governess will try to do with her pupils. Her parents die. It's pretty tragic. And she becomes a companion and governess for the next 10 years and just, making her own way in the world when she winds up being the governess for this duke and his 2 nieces. Now, talk about tragic. We have a duke that's a 4th son. How many times do you see a 4th son become a duke?
Oh my goodness!
We're talking boom, boom, boom. I'm
That's a lot of people to go.
To get this boy his dukedom. And with the title and the estate, he inherits his 2 nieces. Okay, this is the biggest rake in London. He probably has never even seen a child since he doesn't even get up until the sun has come down, kind of thing. And he's got these 2 precious little girls who are 6 and 8. Who drive him crazy. They run off governesses and, they're acting out because, they're missing their parents and they're living with a stranger and all. And so when he meets Willa, he decides she's the governess for them. And he kind of sees how her learning technique is a little bit different. And he begins to spend an inordinate amount of time with these 2 nieces because that allows him to be with the governess as well, because he figures out not only is she a good governess, she'd be a good candidate as a duchess. So that's pretty much their story. And of course, she learns how he really feels about theater people, and he does not want that kind of person near his nieces. And so that's a secret that she's carrying. And it's like, is she going to tell him? When is she going to tell him? She better tell him.
Yeah, you kind of can't hide that one forever. No, that one's going to come out eventually.
Secrets always come out in romances. So, But it was a fun one to write because she was a little offbeat, and I was a teacher for 30
Mhm.
years. And so I know sometimes some of the things I did were a little bit off the wall with my kids, but they usually responded to those different kinds of things. And I know sometimes I would have parents come to open house and say, well, my kid's been telling me what you're doing, this and this, and maybe I need to come back and do history because I hated history when I was that age. So to me, that was always the biggest compliment as a
Mhm.
teacher.
I love the idea of a rake that has to find his way with two little girls, because it changes so many things about him and gives him such a chance to grow too, and that he gets to fall
Oh,
first as
absolutely.
well.
And of course, at the same time, Willa falls in love with Cecily, and I can't remember her sister's name, Lucy. Cecily and Lucy first, and then she falls for him. So, and of course, the
Mhm.
girls are very different too. And like I said, if it would have been two boys, it might have been a different kind of story. But,
Mhm.
once again, Xander falls in love with the girls and the governess as well. So,
Oh, fun, fun. And I know you said something about governesses almost being overdone, but we love them, and we love them because they have a little bit more agency than I think
absolutely. My
other women did at that time period. So
The very first romance that I ever read was a Victoria Holt, and it was Mistress of Bolen, and it was a governess, with just this arrogant. I can't even remember what Colin Tremolin was now, whatever title he held. It's been too long ago, but I just loved how she was smart and sharp and had good comebacks, and probably shouldn't have said some of the things she did. She probably should have watched her tongue a little bit. So I kind of related to that too and all. But like I said, yeah, I love a good governess story. And I have not done very many of them. So it was fun to revisit it in a different setting.
oh, great. Oh, great. And we have Training the Duke is the next book
That is
in
the
the
next
series.
one. It's also on pre-order, and the girl in it, she literally trains Springer Spaniels. And so she's going to train her Duke with some similar methods that she uses to train the dogs as well.
Leave it.
Yeah, he's a war veteran, and he's come back, and he's a little bit damaged physically and emotionally, and being around the dogs is going to help him, and then being around the girl who trains the dogs is going to help a little bit too.
Oh, fun, fun. But I love the whole series, and I'm looking forward to the one that launches this week, and then the one that's coming up as
Oh,
well.
thanks.
And then later on in the week, Cheryl has a release in the Beresford Adventures series, and it's Defended by the Duke. It's also book 6. Cheryl, can you tell us about that one?
Yes. Well, I don't. I'm not as wordy as Alexa. It's like-
We just need to know who he is and who she is,
Yeah.
and why they can't just be together right on the first page. So
Well, this is, and thank you for pronouncing it right. Those of us who are really into England and English history and all that, we all know about the name Beresford, but you'd be surprised how many people say, that's B, they don't have a clue how to say it. But anyway, each one of my books in this series features a member of the Beresford family. And each book is a standalone, and each book is a romantic mystery. And this particular book, it starts off. She's a blue stocking, but she's a Beresford, and he is a duke, and he's very highly sought after. But he just never has met anybody that he would like to settle down with. And he's over at the Earl, who's the titular head of this family, but he's not. Beresford is the family name, so his title name is actually De Vere. So De Vere is the head of the family, and the Duke is visiting De Vere, and they're forward-thinking members of Parliament, and he hears these women speaking in another room, and he hears this woman, and it just stops him in his tracks because she's making such good sense. And
oh, I love that.
pardon?
I love that.
Oh.
That's so great.
Well, I do a lot of the political stuff, and then he sees her, and she's beautiful to boot, and he just really, she's just gobsmacked by this woman, and he wants to find out more about her, and it turns out she's Beresford's cousin, and so it's a real. it starts off with this whirlwind romance between the two of them, and she feels the same way toward him. Of course, he's highly sought after ducal bachelor, and so they get married. And on their very wedding night, before they ever get a chance to consummate their marriage, he is called away by her cousin, De Vere. And De Vere has almost been killed. And
Oh,
De Vere says, I need you to follow through with this mission that I've been investigating. I'm afraid this is a scheme that could bankrupt all of England. And I think I'm getting too close to it. And that's why somebody tried to kill me. And I need you to continue on this investigation, but you can't tell anybody, not even your wife. So this is the thing.
well, hey now.
Yeah, so, then he keeps getting called away on this investigation that he's doing. And so they just can't seem to consummate the marriage. So it gets to the point where she thinks he's got somebody else, and but anyway, they finally do consummate their marriage, and he finally tells her, what's been going on, just to save his marriage. He has to.
Mm-hmm.
And so together they start investigating the matter. And of course, she gets in peril, which all my heroines in this series get in peril. And that's kind of basically the story. But it's been really fun writing the series. I've been writing Regencies for 3 decades. And I don't write as fast as Alexa. It's taken me, this will be my 52nd book. But
Wow.
but over 40 of them have been in the Regency genre. And the first book I ever sold back in the 90s was a Regency. So it kind of pigeonholed me into that. But I'm really getting a lot slow. I write slow anyway, and then I'm just kind of like, after so many, I don't want to do the same things. I keep trying to think of different things to do. And so that's why I've kind of gone off into mysteries, because I just got kind of tired of what I was doing. So
Well, and it's always nice to have a little extra storyline too.
it is.
And I love it when the couple can work together. I was talking to another author earlier in the week, and she said something about her stories being us against them. And I like that idea of the couple working together against to either to solve the mystery or against a common foe, or, it's like, because it gives you a chance to see them together in action. So.
Mm-hmm. And I like that added layer, the romance with the mystery together. That's a good marriage. It really is.
I do like that. And I like to read that. So you write what you like. So.
That's very true.
Well, if you're going to have to stay in their heads for that long, you ought to like where you are.
Exactly. And talking about staying in their heads, when Alexa mentioned reading the old Victoria Holt, the Mistress of Maryland, I read it. I think I had read it, when it first came out many, many years ago. But I think I reread it about 10 years ago, and I was just astonished. I thinking that I really loved these books, did I? There's no male point of view in them. It's all from the woman's head. And I really like that we can now get into the hero's head. That makes it so much. I think it just enriches your story so much more when, you can actually see the man starting to desire the woman, and what's going through his brain. So we're so much more fortunate now that we get to write all of the points of view.
I do like that. I like the balance, and I like it when the hero falls for the heroine before she falls for him. I love seeing just that big alpha male all of a sudden just brought to his knees, but we're in his head and we know that, like you said, in the old days, decades ago, the reader didn't know that. We had to think, okay, well, maybe he likes her, and maybe he dropped a little hint there and all, but I do try to balance mine out. Sometimes I try to alternate chapters, one in the hero, one in the heroine's point of view, and then sometimes the plot, the way it's been driven, it's whoever has more at stake at that point in the story. That's who gets the chapter at that point.
So do you find it necessary to weight their character arc similarly so that they both have a certain amount of growing to do to get to be together?
It depends upon the couple for me. Sometimes one couple has to grow a little and one has to grow a bunch. And sometimes they both have an equal type size journey to. So like I said, it really is plot and character. I always start first with character. I say that I start with the name, and I will fret 2 or 3 days over a name and putting that first name and surname together. And then, getting the characters, but the hero and heroine, do those names go together and all? And then once I get the name, I start getting a visual picture and I have a physical description. And then from there, I spring and I can start putting in personality traits. And then once I've got some pretty solid character sketches, usually for them and maybe the antagonist, then I can work on backstory that will contribute to that personal growth arc later. And then I finally mess with plot. So that's kind of my work.
The plot is the very last thing for you then.
Absolutely.
Wow. What about you, Cheryl? How does your order
It's
go?
kind of similar to what Alexa does, because I do always do character charts at the very beginning. I used to, I'm not as good as I used to be, but I used to do, I called it my 12-step program, which I took Christopher Vogler's Hero's Journey.
Yes.
And I had it in all the steps. And I used to just do a 1 page and I would fill in those steps. And that used to be how my initial plot structure was, just a little 1-page thing from Christopher Vogler. But I don't really do that much. Maybe it's because it more comes second nature now. I don't know. Yeah. But I mean, I like to start in the ordinary world, and then I like to have like a call to action and, stuff like that. So, but it kind of comes second nature now. So I don't write it down like I used to.
Yeah. Well, I'm not a huge plotter. I will have maybe 6, 8 bullet points. I want this to happen, this, and this. But then it's the filling in between that to me is so intriguing, because sometimes I don't know how they're getting from plot A to B to C to all the way to Z. And I had a friend who wrote, oh gosh, like 30, 40-page single-spaced plot summaries. And, she would give that
Emily does that.
As a critique partner, and she would give this to me and I would read these 40 pages and I had read the whole book. I mean, there were no surprises, no curveballs, and I would be bored writing that. So that's why I can't stick to a handful. And like I said, sometimes I surprise myself on how I got from point C to D. And sometimes it changes. I've got those 6 or 8 points and it's like, well, their character has changed, their story, the journey has changed. I'll cross through that one and just add something else in. So
I actually find my method is pretty much what yours is. I just, I'm not a heavy plotter either. And, a lot of it just happens as you learn your characters and as you move forward.
Yeah. One thing I
just wish I could write as fast as you.
Well, that's the teacher in me. I mean, I was always really disciplined and had the lesson plans in place. And that way, once I had the plans, if there was a fire drill or a this or a that, ice storm, whatever, then I could be flexible. I could punt, but I had to have that structure in place. And I don't want to say nose to the grindstone, because that sounds like work and no fun at all. But I mean, I write 7 days a week. I love what I do now. I mean, I even love it more than teaching. And I never thought that was going to be possible. But I work quite a bit, So, and I walk in the mornings and I dictate, as I'm walking. And so that also helps. By the time I get home from a 3-4 mile walk, I've got a chapter there and I can go on and transcribe it and then go back and tweak it and then move forward. So
that's fantastic. That's something that I would like to learn how to do, because I love the idea of working through the ideas while your body's moving too.
There is a connection between movement and creativity. And let me tell you, I am a lot more productive now that I do that, because I used to just think about things as I was out, think about characters, think about scenes. Then I would start running a scene in my head. Then I would come home and try to capture it. And I inevitably left out things. And I thought, why am I just thinking about it? Why not just get it down while I'm out there and have some structure? And so it has helped, increase my output. I did this 8 historical series this year. And I also have a 5-book contemporary series that's out this year too. So I am a lot more productive.
Oh, gosh. Well, I do walk. I walk every morning and I do, try to plot. I could never do the method you do, because to me, writing is all about putting the words down and rearranging the words and this and that. I'm heavy into editing. I mean, but I have a background in all of that. I could never dictate a story ever, because it's all about arrangement of words.
And the thing is, that's just part of the book. I'll come home and transcribe and get that down, and then I'll go and I'll eat breakfast and put clothes on to wash and come back. And then I start like you. And then it's just the typing and it's the fiddling and all. But what I really do that helps, I think, speed the process along, about every 3 to 5 chapters, I just stop and I go back and I read those through and I tweak as I go. So every 3 to 5, I'm going back. So when I hit the end, I've done 90% of the editing that I'm going to do. And so,
and they're the same people at the end that they were at the beginning, because you can make your adjustments as you go along.
Exactly. And to some people, it's like, oh, that's the first draft. Now I've got to go back and do another 250 everything. So what I do then, I let a book sit. I go to the next book in the series. I do the same method until I get to 7, 8, however long the series is. And then once I end the series, I go back to that first book and I read back to back to back every book. And that way I check for consistencies on personality and just the way they treat people, the way they address people, just, all of these little things, reading them all in a row. And that takes me like 2 or 3 weeks, to read a series and then make teeny other little tweaks there too. But it's a solid way. It's worked for me. So,
wow.
It's the way that readers do it too. So I think there's an advantage to going through the series the way readers move through the series, because they see things a lot more closely together than we do. It's like lots of times we'll interview people and they'll have to go look up their characters' names, and it's a perfectly understandable thing because you're already 3 stories away from the book that's launching now.
I'm way ahead. Like I'm writing in 2024 now,
I want to know how far.
And I'll get edits, and I'll look at the editing notes my editor gives me, and I'm like, who is that? What is she talking about? Kind of thing. So what I've learned now, when I know edits are on the way, I do that tweaking I said every 3 to 5 chapters, I go back and bullet point the main events in that chapter. And that way, when I do get editing notes and the editor's talking about something, I just go to that summary and it's like, okay, there it is, chapter 12, and I know how to address it. So I've started rereading my summary in anticipation of getting the notes. And that's kind of helped too, because like I said, a lot of times I've written a story a year to a year and a half before I get the edits, because I'm so far ahead.
You are a phenom. Golly. I mean, after I turn in a book, I give myself time off, It's like,
I do that too. I have a glass of wine. I have an ice cream cone, I play. So, but you're right, Evelyn. The fact
it's just like a little bit of time off though, Alexa. That's not like a lot of time.
I mean, and I binge TV series like that, but what it takes me a year or 2 to write, readers can zip through it in 2 weeks, if they just read a book or 2 a day, kind of thing. So.
Yeah. And I think the inconsistencies become much more obvious when you do it, like when you do it that way. So being able to stay on top of things, I think is huge. Yeah. Cheryl, are you a heavy editor, or do you end up with a draft that's pretty clean at the?
I do a lot like Alexa does, in that, I'll write a chapter, print it out, edit it. Write a chapter. I mean, I'll correct it, print it out again, edit it again. I edit real strongly, and so when I get finished, it's usually pretty clean. But then I print out the whole book and I'll read it 2 more times for inconsistencies and stuff like that. So, but I mean, it's not heavy editing at that stage. It's more reading for consistency.
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
And you print your books?
What?
You print them?
I do.
So you have paper copies?
I do both. I edit both ways. I edit on the screen several times, and then, but a lot of this goes back because of my journalism degree and how I was a journalist for a long time. And in those days, we didn't have computers when I started. Yeah. So we printed everything. Matter of fact, we used to have to make carbon copies of all of our stories. And so, I mean, I'm used to I always did paper and pencil editing. And editing was my strong suit always. I was my top editing student at the University of Texas. So, but that's just what, that's just what I get off to is editing. But,
and I hate it.
I get it. Oh, you hate it?
I could never dictate a chapter. I mean, everybody has their different things that they do. I wished I could dictate a chapter. I think that would be so cool.
Well, what I'd like to do eventually, besides talking into my iPhone, I would love just to take my Microsoft program that I have, because I know you can dictate on it and just maybe give my wrist a rest and speak chapters. But I know also you have to do the period, end quote, new paragraph, all of that. And I think that would take me out of the story. I don't do that.
Oh, so
I just kind of pause. And I know, a pause means new paragraph or that kind of thing. But I tried it once and I didn't like it because, like I said, you had to do start quote or something like that and then say it, comma, period, end quote, new
and
paragraph.
Then you don't remember what
I lost
you're
track
going
of
to
the
say
story.
next.
My brain loves that so much better, Alexa, because I had always, I had always thought that to dictate you had to do that. You had to go through and do it with the punctuation. But you're just transcribing, so you're talking, you're telling yourself the story.
Yes.
And then going back and typing what you've told yourself.
Yes.
Well, I like that a lot better.
Yeah.
That works for me. But I Cheryl, I absolutely understand the wanting paper, because I think your brain works differently when you have something in your hand. Like for me anyway, it's different to have something, something written to be able to scratch through, and because sometimes my hands go faster than my fingers do, or my head goes faster than my fingers do.
And you're young, so that's interesting.
Oh, God bless you. That is not true, but
no, yes, you are. Yes, you are.
So we have just a tiny little bit of time at the end here. We had talking about travel, and I know you both are in Texas, and you must just be like perishing in the heat at this point. I would send you some of our rain because Virginia's had rain, and we're going to get more. And with the hurricane moving up the coast, we're likely to get more still. So I wish I could send you some of that. But I thought maybe we could take a few minutes and talk about travel, and travel as a research tool, because I know since both of you write historical and Regency, that idea of being able to walk in the places where people walked and actually see how things fit together, it's got to be something that's like really, really interesting.
Well, I'll start. I've always had a love affair with England, and I started going there 36 years ago, and I have gone there a dozen times. And
oh, wow.
And I also have taken a flat in London several times. My husband is retired now, but he was a professor. And so he, after our kids were out of college, then he started taking off summers. So we would go and we would stay for, many weeks, and we'd get a Brit Rail pass and we'd stay in London, and then we would go off. And so I've been to almost every county in England, and I haven't been to Norfolk. I feel like I know the country pretty well. We even did a nonfiction book on stately homes of England, how to get to them by the rail, because we don't like to drive in England. But yeah, I've been there a lot, and I do a lot of research when I'm there. So love
you
it.
stayed there long enough to get the flavor of it too, which I think is a really lovely thing when it's more than just a quick visit.
Yeah, I've been there, like I said, 36 years worth of trips, and several times flats there, and also, love the British rails, and we go everywhere on the rails. So it's fun.
Well, I need to call Mr. Aston then and let him talk to you, because that sounds heavenly. We did go to London this past April, and we stayed like 16 days, and every other day we took a day trip out. And so, like you said, the rails are so easy, and they've got a lot of tour coaches that you can do that. So I got to see places that I've only read about, Leeds Castle, which is supposed to be the prettiest castle, in all of England, and Warwick. We went to Warwick, which is the best example of a medieval castle there. We we pretty much did everything I wanted to do except go up to the Lake District. I've never been there yet. And well, I say I've never been. I set a book next year in my new series. Part of it's in the Lake District. So I just combed the internet and went.
Hey, I can tell you how to get to the Lake District and how to do it all without having to get a car. I do it all on rails.
So
we even picked out a hotel in the Lake District that we could walk to from the rail station with our little suitcases. So,
yeah. So
my favorite place in England is Cornwall, and we've stayed there 3 times. And it is just my favorite place on the whole planet. Love it. Love it. I love the Lake District too. Been to Scotland and Wales. I wasn't as crazy about Scotland as other people seem to love Scotland, but it wasn't nearly as green as like the Lake District or some of the other parts of England. Mm-hmm. It didn't turn me on, but like the Lake District, I like much better than Scotland, and I like Cornwall better than the Lake District. Love Cornwall.
Well, I've never been to Cornwall except in Mira Platt's new series. It's the Moonstone series.
Moonstone Landing.
I've read all 3 of the books already, and it's like, okay, Cornwall is back on the bucket list now since I've read those.
Talk to me before you go, because I've got hints.
I will do that.
I can't remember. Does your husband drive in the British Isles?
Oh, no.
We almost got divorced.
Yeah, that's a pretty good reason why. No, we'd rather take public transportation.
We only tried it once, and it was horrible.
Narrow roads and sheep. It's not. Yeah. Narrow roads, the wrong side of the road, and sheep. It's
and you talk about narrow roads. We're talking one lane, not one lane in each direction. We're talking one lane, and they're coming right at you. It's scary.
Well, and it's not fair to the driver, because the driver is having to so focus on things that they don't get to enjoy everything. I just came back from, I've been up at Glacier National Park and Yellowstone, if you can see my shirt here.
Yellowstone's my favorite.
Those Texas temps. And my good friend that lives up there, when we usually go to Glacier, I'm the one that's hanging out the window and stopping and let's hike here and all. And she's focusing on that yellow line and the narrow roads. And so this time we took the jammers, the red 1937 old cars, and they take the tops off of them, and they seat about, I don't know, maybe 15, 16 people. And the driver gives you just a running commentary during it. And she was able to enjoy the park really for the first time because she wasn't having to drive. So that's why I'm all about doing the public transportation, whether it's rail.
Oh, absolutely. We love it. Like I said, we did a book on it. It's out of print now because it was just too much trouble to keep up with it, about how to go to all these places in England just by rail.
Yeah.
And I would have like directions like, well, you take it to this rail station and you get off. There's a fish and chips place on the left, and you go left, and then all that kind of stuff. So it's very detailed, but it's fun. What I will say that I loved, although you're limited somewhat, but I love seeing Cornwall on the public buses, because neither one of us had to drive, and we could just sit back and let them drive and us look. And it's just so gorgeous there. We loved it. I'd say you're limited because it's a pretty sizable county. And the thing is, the buses don't run like late at night, but yet in the summer, as you probably know, Alex, you get sunshine till like 11 o'clock at night. But the buses aren't running at 11 o'clock at night. You could still be seeing all these wonderful things in Cornwall, but you'd be stuck, a 3-hour drive from your hotel or your guest house. They don't really have hotels much in Cornwall. It's mostly guest houses, but you couldn't get home. So, that's the only limitation about the public transport, is they don't run real late at night. So, and a lot of the trains don't either. So, but it's wonderful.
Lady, you have given me such wanderlust. I always want to go anywhere. Anyone wants to go, I always want to go along. And now I have such wanderlust too. So, and I'm so excited about the books that are coming out this week. I'll put the links in the comments so you can grab them if you haven't grabbed them already. Dragonblade books are their very best deal on pre-order and release, so you want to get them right away. If you missed them, you can read them in Kindle Unlimited. So, ladies, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us this week. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Go Longhorns.